Hello everyone, today I'll be talking about transport system in mammals, and this will help us in our upcoming WAEC, NECO and JAMB examination. So these are the content, these are what I'll be talking about today. I'll talk on the need for transportation, active and passive transport, the mammalian circulatory system, the plasmas and the blood cells. I will talk on the artery, veins and capillaries. I will talk on the lymphatic system, and I will briefly talk on the heart. So let's start. The need for transportation. The main reason for the need for transportation is an issue with the surface area to volume ratio. Small organisms have a large surface area to volume ratio, and because of that they are able to absorb nutrients more. But large organisms, which include mammals, they have a low surface area to volume, and because they have a low surface area to volume ratio, they are not able to transport materials, nutrients by simple diffusion. So they need special system that would help them to transport these substances, and special absorbing substances such as lungs or gills, which increase the surface area for absorption. And then I will also have to talk on the passive and active transport. You can check a previous video on the cell and its environment. I've talked on diffusion, osmosis, plasmolysis, turgidity, flaccidity, and the rest. So it is also important for us to know about passive and active transport too. I won't do a great justice to this topic when I'm talking about transport system, and I'm not talking about the passive and active transport. So when we talk about passive transport, we are talking about the movement of particles towards their concentration gradient. That means when particle moves from a region of high concentration to a region of low concentration, they are moving towards their concentration gradient. And an example is the movement of ADP, that's adenosine diphosphate, into the mitochondria. While active transport is the process by which a molecules move from areas of lower concentration to higher concentration. So when we talk about active transport, they are moving from lower concentration to higher concentration. And in doing that, these particles and molecules, they move against their concentration gradient. An example is the absorption of mineral cells by the root hair cells, the absorption of glucose and amino acid by the cells in the small intestine of humans. So all these are examples of active transport. So now let me now talk on the mammalian circulatory system. It's usually into four categories rather. I'm sorry for that. We have the blood vessel, the lymph, and the heart. The blood vessel, the lymph, and the heart. So now let me start first with the blood. Under the blood is divided into two. We have the blood plasmas and the blood cells. The blood plasma and the blood cells. And so let's quickly talk about the blood plasma. The plasma. Approximately 55% of blood is made up of plasma. And this plasma is 90% water and 10% dissolved molecules. And these molecules are mainly plasma proteins. And plasma proteins can be divided into three types. The first one that we have is the albumins. And what they do is that they help to regulate water potential by maintaining normal blood volume and pressure. They help to regulate the water potential by maintaining normal blood volume and pressure. We also have the immunoglobulins. They are very large protein that target infection. and together with the white blood cells, they form the immune system, that is the immunoglobulin. And then we also have the fibrinogen. These are tightly coiled protein that unwind to form a blood clot. And then other molecules that are also found in the plasma include glucose, amino acid, vitamins, minerals, urea, carbon dioxide, and the hormones. So now let me quickly talk about the blood cells. We have three types of blood cells. We have the red blood cells or the erythrocytes. We have the white blood cells or the leukocytes. Then we have the platelets or the thrombocytes. So we have the red blood cell, the white blood cells, and the platelets. Let me quickly talk about the red blood cells. So they are tiny biconcave disc-shaped cells. And because of their shape, they have a large surface area to volume ratio. They do not have nucleus, mitochondria, or ribosome. You can check the function of nucleus, mitochondria, and ribosome. I've done a previous video on the cell. You can check that. Then the third one that you have to know is that they consist of hemoglobin, and this hemoglobin carries oxygen. So the main component of red blood cells is that they have hemoglobin. It is this hemoglobin that helps them to carry oxygen. And once hemoglobin has carried oxygen, it is called oxyhemoglobin. And to divert a little bit, and actually there is another compound that this hemoglobin has high affinity for, and that is carbon monoxide. So this hemoglobin can also bind with carbon monoxide. That is why it is very poisonous. But just know that the main function of hemoglobin is that it carries oxygen. And they are made in the bone marrow. They are made in the bone marrow and live about 120 days. And then they are destroyed and recycled by the liver. Red blood cells are destroyed. So now let's talk about white blood cells. They are colorless cells and possesses a nucleus. They function in defending the body against pathogens. And actually that is the reason why white blood cells are called body soldiers. So you can also call white blood cells body soldiers. They prevent infection, they fight against pathogens. And they are made in the bone marrow and the lymphatic tissues. And they are mainly divided into two. The first one is the phagocytes. The phagocytes feed on pathogens by a process called phagocytosis. And the second one is lymphocytes. These lymphocytes, they produce antibodies, antitoxin that fight pathogen. So white blood cells are divided into phagocyte and lymphocyte. And actually under all this one, we still have some other one, but that will be in another topic entirely. I don't want this video to be too long. So that's that about the white blood cells. Now let me quickly talk about the platelets. The platelets are responsible for blood clotting. They are responsible for blood clotting, and they are made in the bone marrow. They are responsible for blood clotting. They are made in the bone marrow, and they have a short lifespan. Now the function of the blood system, the function of the blood. The function that we should know about the blood is that the main function of the blood is transportation. So the first function that I have here is the transportation of nutrients. So blood carries nutrients. Also transportation of oxygen. Blood helps to transport oxygen to cells and tissues that need it. Also transportation of waste like urea are being transported in the blood. Also blood helps in temperature regulation. Also blood helps in immunity when they produce the white blood cells that help to fight against infection, and it helps in communication. And this communication that I'm talking about is the transport of hormones. And we have different types of hormones, which I will still talk about when I'm talking on coordination. Now let's move to blood vessels. These are channels or tubes which convey blood to all parts of the body. They are channels or tubes that convey blood to all parts of the body. They include the artery, the veins, and the capillaries. The arteries, the vein, and the capillary they are like pipe that transport blood from one place to another place inside the body. So now let's quickly talk about the arteries. Arteries, they carry oxygenated blood except pulmonary artery, and they carry blood away from the heart at a high pressure. They also have a thick wall and no valves. The veins. The veins carry deoxygenated blood except the pulmonary vein. They carry blood to the heart at a low pressure, and they have a thinner walls and valves. Why capillaries? Capillaries are the link between arteries and vein. They are the place where the exchange with tissues occur. And the capillary wall is one cell thick. It is one cell thick and somewhat porous, so that there will be easy exchange of nutrients. Also, exchange at capillaries is by diffusion, mass flow, and active transport. So now let's quickly look at the differences between the arteries and the vein. The first difference that I have here is that arteries have a thick muscular wall, while the vein has a thin and less muscular wall. Also, artery has an elastic wall, but the vein wall is non-elastic. And also, arteries carry blood away from the heart, but vein carry blood to the heart. Arteries have a small lumen, but vein has a large lumen. Artery carries oxygenated blood except the pulmonary artery, while the vein carry deoxygenated blood except the pulmonary vein. So these are just the 5 differences that I wrote here. There are still many more, but these are just the one that I did for the classic. So now let me quickly talk about the lymphatic system. So a collection of special drainage vessels receiving excess tissue fluid, and once the tissue fluid enters the lymphatic capillaries, it is called the lymph, and the lymph node filter the lymph and produce lymphocytes. They produce lymphocytes, and the lymph vessel have many valves but has a low pressure, and the lymph re-enter the blood just before the right atrium. The lymph entered the blood just before the right atrium. Now let's look at the function of the lymphatic system. They have 2 main roles. They have a circulatory role and they have a defense role. So under the circulatory role, it's return excess tissue fluid to the blood. It maintains the blood volume, pressure, and concentration. And then the second thing that it does in circulation is that it collects and delivers absorbed lipid from the small intestine into the blood. Now let's look at the defense role. The lymph node filter out pathogens in the lymph, and also production and export of lymphocytes to the blood system for general distribution. And then the third one is detection of antigens and production of specific antibodies. So these are the functions of the lymphatic system. So now let me quickly talk on the heart. The heart is a muscular pumping organ. It's situated between the lungs in the thoracic cavity. Situated between the lung and the thoracic cavity. So the main function of the heart is that heart is responsible for pumping blood. That's the main function. It is a pumping organ, and it is made up of specialized muscle called the cardiac muscle, and these muscles are protected by the pericardium. And the heart consists of 4 chambers. That's something about the mammalian heart. The mammalian heart consists of 4 chambers. We have the upper chambers and the lower chambers. The upper chambers are called the auricles, while the lower chambers are called the ventricles. The upper chambers are auricles, while the lower chambers are called the ventricles. And the septum divide the half into two equal half. That's the left side and the right side. And then the left ventricle has a thicker wall to generate enough pressure on contraction needed to pump blood through the aorta. The aorta is the strongest artery. So each pumping of the heart is known as heartbeat. So this is the diagram of the heart. So we can see the 4 chamber there. That's the right auricle, the right ventricle, the left auricle, and the left ventricle. And between the left auricle and the left ventricle, there is a valve in between. And the name of that valve is called the mitral valve or the bicuspid valve. So the left side, the valve that is between the left auricle and the left ventricle is the mitral valve or the bicuspid valve. While the valve between the right auricle and the right ventricle is the tricuspid valve. So you can look at the heart very well. You can see the pulmonary artery, the pulmonary vein, the vena cava. The vena cava is the largest vein. We have the aorta, the aortic valve. So just look at it. That's the structure of the heart. Now let me quickly talk about the summary of circulation in the heart. So when blood moves through the superior vena cava, the superior vena cava is the largest vein. I know that the function of the vein is to transport blood through the heart. So when blood will move from the superior vena cava to the right auricle. Then from the right auricle, it will move through the tricuspid valve into the right ventricle. And then from the right ventricle, the blood will go to the pulmonary artery. It will first go through the pulmonary artery, then the pulmonary artery to the lungs, where the blood now become oxygenated. You know that previously I said something that vein carry deoxygenated blood. So it is in the lung through some specialized organs called the alveoli that the blood gets oxygenated. So this oxygenated blood will now move back to the heart through the pulmonary vein. That's the main reason why that the pulmonary vein has oxygenated blood. Normally, vein are supposed to have deoxygenated blood, but pulmonary vein has oxygenated blood. So that blood will now move from the pulmonary vein to the left auricle. Then don't forget that the valve between the left auricle and the left ventricle is the bicuspid valve or the mitral valve. So the blood will move from the left auricle to the left ventricle through the bicuspid valve. Then the left ventricle muscle is very thick. It has a very muscular muscle. It will now pump the blood out of the heart through the aorta rather, and then oxygenated blood will now move to all parts of the body. So now let me quickly talk about heartbeat. We have two stages of heartbeat. The first one is the diastole, and in the diastole, the auricles contract and the ventricle relax. The heart fills with blood under low pressure from the vein. What happens at the diastole is that blood moves from the auricles into the ventricles. Blood moves from the auricles into the ventricles. While under the systole, the auricles relax and the ventricle contract. The chambers of the heart are emptied of blood. So into the ventricles, this contraction, this systoles now, the right ventricles, the blood there will be transferred to the lung. While the left ventricle, the blood there will be transferred through the aorta to the other part of the body. So the blood in the heart at that time is empty. So these are the two stages of heartbeat, the diastoles and the systoles. So thank you very much for listening. I really appreciate you. And there are still a lot of things that I will talk about. I will still talk on more on circulation, the single and the double circulation, the close and open circulation. But just thank you for listening, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more content like this. Thank you very much.